Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I finally figured out what the title of this video was going to be. Because for a while, the original title of this video was going to be Stop Paying for Sponsored Content, or Stop Paying for Preview Videos. The problem with that title is it's a great title, it sounds good, but it lacks the nuance this conversation is actually going to have, and if it lacks the nuance, it does mean that it's a bit clickbaity. When you drop all nuance and you just put the thing in, even if there's truth to it, it's a little bit clickbaity. And so instead, the video title is going to be something along the lines of, Sponsored Content Isn't Going to Make Your Game a Success. I'll try to find a catchier way to say it because I think that's a little mouthy, but that's the general idea here. And that's the topic of today's video. Sponsored content is not going to make your game a success. This is a video that's slightly against my own best interest because we do offer sponsored content on the channel. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of room and place for sponsored content. I'm a big fan of why it exists and the fact that it is a mutually beneficial relationship for the publisher, the content creator, and the audience to an extent. But I also think that sometimes people think sponsored content is more important or will do things that it isn't. The impetus for this video, the inspiration, was I saw a campaign recently that barely funded. It funded, but barely funded. And I saw a conversation on a Facebook thread, a conversation starting about how they had a bunch of sponsored videos and they barely funded. And it's something that I've seen before, and it's something that we'll see again. And it made me realize that it's good to dive into the conversation and talk about the fact that at the end of the day, sponsored content is not going to make your game a success. It is one part of many of the things that you have to do to bring your game to life, and it's very easy for a publisher, designer, whoever, aspiring creator, it's very easy to look at the ecosystem and think, hey, I'll just get a bunch of sponsored videos for a bunch of popular channels, and that will make my game popular. This is a good time to kind of dive into a bit of a background over here. For those who don't know, you may already know, most of you probably already know, but for those of you who don't know, what I'm referring to is the general idea that we have crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is an essential part, I don't know if essential is the right word, it's a big part. Crowdfunding is a very big part of the tabletop space. A lot of popular games come to life through crowdfunding. It allows creators, indie creators, to bring their ideas to life. It allows them to be passionate, to design, to not be tied down to finding traditional publishing. I hesitate to use the word essential, but I think it's a very good part of the tabletop space. I think it has pros and cons like most things do, but I think it is incredibly helpful to have crowdfunding in our space. Along with crowdfunding, though, goes the fact that how do I make my game a success? How do I make it popular? How do I actually make it fun to $30, $50, $100,000 or more dollars? And a tool that is used in that umbrella of tools that you have options of, a tool is going to be sponsored content. Sponsored content, the basic idea of which is when a publisher sits there and says, I'm going to pay for you, whoever you is, some content creator usually, to go ahead and put together a video of the game. Let's call it a preview. I'll get into other things shortly. This preview is going to be kind of showcasing the game, how it works, how it operates, and I'm going to pay you to do it. You'll put it up on your channel, I can use it on my page, and then I got kind of a few things out of it. Because what purpose does a preview serve? The first purpose is it's an overview of the game. People who want to know more about game X can watch this video and see the general idea of how to play game X. It's not a how to play, it's not like a full, first player is determined this way, and then at the end of the round you do cleanup and maintenance. It's not going to cover all the things, but hopefully it'll give you a general overview. This over here is a worker placement drafting game. We're going to draft our cards in 4 rounds. At the end of the 4th round, you're going to see who has the most victory points, and that person's going to win the game. Each round you're going to draft the cards, pass them to the player to your left. You're going to select a card and place it down. That's going to allow you to place your worker onto a particular zone on the board. As you place workers onto the zone, you're going to earn those resources. As you go into other zones on the board, you can trade those resources in for more area control or points, and then at the end of the 4 rounds, you score and see who won. It's a made-up game. A preview is going to be more than a minute and a half. A preview is hopefully going to be 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever the appropriate amount of time is to give you, the viewer, a general overview of how the game plays, while not getting into the nitty-gritties of every single rule to make it a manageable length, but helping you decide, is this something for you? That's the first purpose a preview serves. The second purpose it serves is advertising. It serves as advertising because the content creator who posts it is almost always, it's very rare to see this not the case, is almost always going to post that video to their own audience who will then see and find out that this game exists. Oh my gosh, look at this. I'm subscribed to content creator X, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, any of the platforms, and I just saw they posted a video on the cards of Valhalla. I'm going to call it the Cards of Valhalla as my drafting area control worker placement game. And what's this game, Cards of Valhalla? Let me take a look at it. You may find out about a game that you didn't know existed otherwise, and you wouldn't have known existed otherwise, or you may have. That's more about the ecosystem in general. And so the second purpose a video serves, a sponsored video, is it is advertising to that creator's audience. The third purpose these videos serve is social validation. Social validation is the very idea that you may never actually even watch that video, but you go to the crowdfunding page, the Cards of Valhalla, it showed up on a Facebook ad you saw, you click through it, and as you scroll through the page, you see a bunch of popular channels whose names you recognize who are covering the game. That gives social validation on several different levels. It gives validation that it's the type of game that might be a fit for you, especially if those channels generally show things that are a fit for you. It also gives validation to the fact that the creator knows the ecosystem, to that the various people covering the game, that they felt it was a good enough game to cover. Speaking for myself, and I cannot speak for all content creators, but I assume most content creators have a similar bar. Speaking for myself, I will happily do sponsored content around a game that I may not want myself, but I do have to feel it's good enough that it is a fit for the space. I have turned down many, many games that I do not think are a fit for my audience, and I've even said yes to games, played them, and then refunded the creator saying, hey, I thought it was going to be a fit, but I just don't think it's a good fit. I want games that I showcase on the channel to be of a minimum threshold of quality and target audience fit before I showcase them. And so you have social validation of the fact of all these factors as you scroll through the page, seeing the creators cover them. That social validation extends past the page. It might extend to your YouTube channel subscriptions. As you go through your subscription feed, you see 3 or 4 channels who've covered this game. You may never have gone to the page, but you have kind of advertising plus social validation just on your own social media feed. You also have it on Facebook or Board Game Geek or anywhere where people are posting about the game. Wherever you see creators talking about the game, that adds a general social validation. So again, a sponsored preview serves 3 main purposes. It is giving you informational, educational content about the game, it is advertising to that channel, and it gives social validation. These concepts do expand to other things as well, but we can go through it to a certain extent. I'm not going to go through every single one. A playthrough is going to be a similar concept, it has all those general things, but instead of seeing how to play, you're seeing it in action. You're seeing the actual game happen, as opposed to seeing an overview of it. A how to play is going to be the same concept, just in more detail. Some people are not interested in a how to play because they don't want to watch an hour-long video. Some people don't care about the 20-minute preview video. They're like, you're halfway teaching me the game, I want to see it all completely in depth. And so these different types of content serve different purposes. There's shorts that might be a bit more educational, well, less educational, a bit more entertaining, giving you a very short overview of the game. Alternatively, it could be a short preview, or it could be a short, funny video that helps pull you into the experience. There's a lot of different forms of sponsored content out there, but they hopefully all serve some form of social validation, advertising to that creator's channel, and then hopefully some form of educational or entertainment content around that game. This is all great. This is all why these things exist. But you have to know how much sponsored content to engage with, if any at all. The title of this video, sponsored content, will not make your game a success. Time and time again, I have seen creators who primarily leaned into just getting as many big names as possible in the sponsored content space, and then trying to get all of them to just cover their game, and before you know it, they're out $4,000 or $5,000, possibly more, between all the people they're paying for videos, and their game only raises $20,000, if that much, which is not a great ratio. Because I do find that there are always going to be some creators who think that the pathway to success is just sponsoring as many videos as possible, and I don't think that's true. The harsh reality is that sponsored content, no differently than any other form of advertising, is effectively shining a spotlight on that thing that you created. And if the thing that you created isn't appealing enough, sponsored content is not going to suddenly make it appealing. This is where we have to get into the other various forms of things you can do to actually make your game a success, and in fact talking about the general nature of how algorithms and advertising tends to work. Let's talk about advertising to a certain extent, the general idea of paying for Facebook ads, Google ads, all of that kind of thing. There's a term called ROAS, return on ad spend, and ROAS is generally a measurement of how much money did you spend to get that much in sales. Let's say you spend $100 on Facebook ads, and that $100 translates into $400 of sales. That means you have a 4-to-1 ROAS. As a business owner, you have to manage the other costs of the business. You have to manage the fact that, well, how much does it cost? If you sold $400 worth of games, let's say your game is $50, that's 8 different games. How much does it cost to make your game? If it costs you $20 to make each of those games, then you have to pay $160 in product costs, that's your cost of goods, before you even get that. So that $400 sounds great, but you paid $100 in advertising, you paid $160 for the games themselves, which means you currently spent $260 to get $400 in sales. You have to factor in that you also have to pay a cut, whether it's Kickstarter or GameFund, you have to pay 5%. Then you also have to pay the payment processing fee. So that means usually you're looking at around 8% on that $400. So boom, before you know it, that's another $32 gone. I think that math checks out. $32 is gone, so you're $260 up to $290 in costs. So your $400 in sales has $290 of expenses. That's before we get into the cost of running a business. And that's all assuming a cost of goods of $20 per game. Very often, if you're a small indie creator, sometimes you have a higher cost than that. This is a whole larger conversation we can get into about the nature of costs and multipliers and general ecosystem of tabletop crowdfunding, or in general of just running a business. But the important thing to know in this particular conversation is that was with a ROAS of 4 to 1. Now, if you map that out, if your ROAS is a 3 to 1 ROAS, you're paying $100 for $300 worth of sales. When you factor in all those costs, your cost of goods is going to go a little lower, sure, but you are looking at a drastically different amount of potential profit. Generally, and again, this is a very, very vague number, generally you probably need a minimum ROAS of 3 to 1 to be able to be profitable, and depending on the creator, you're often looking at a higher than that. It's going to be different creator by creator, but it does mean you need to get a certain degree of ratio of how many sales you're getting relative to the money you're spending in order to be successful. There's many things that can contribute towards a game getting a lower ROAS. And the biggest one, unfortunately, is that what you're selling isn't compelling enough. That could be because the art doesn't look good. That could be because the mechanics don't look innovative or refreshing. That could be because the first two things are great, but the cost of the game is so insanely high that people can't justify it. There are many factors that can get into why something isn't compelling, but when you run an ad, and someone clicks on that ad, sees the game, there's several things happening because you're paying for the running of the ad in general. So if I see the ad and I don't click through, that means you're paying for nothing. If I see the ad, click through, and then don't buy it, that means you're paying for nothing. That is an inevitable part of the process when you run any form of advertising, but how compelling your product is going to determine whether you're getting a good ROAS or not. Paying for a lot of content creators to cover your game while not ensuring that the game you actually are making is compelling enough in the visuals, in the mechanics, in the price point, is effectively going up to Facebook and in advance saying, I would like to spend $5,000 on ads before I even see how things turn out. And sometimes that can give you a great return on ad spend. Other times it won't. It really depends on the product. This is the harsh reality of the crowdfunding tabletop space. I mean, the harsh reality of life in general, I guess. You can and should consider sponsored content costs, whether it's actual advertising, whether it's dealing with content creators. You should consider that as a big part of one of many things you're doing to make your game a success. But sponsored content will not make your game a success on its own. The product has to be appealing enough that as people see the game, as people see an overview, as people see it in action, as people see the visuals, prototype or not, people are compelled by what the game looks like. As people see all these things, they have to be compelled to make the purchase. The content creators alone are providing some degree of social validation that an ad might not, but it's not going to be enough to take it from not that appealing to suddenly appealing. Assuming appealing is a spectrum, because it definitely is a spectrum. If your game is, a 40 on the 1 to 100 scale, content creators covering it can make it a 45 or 47, because hey, here's these people whose videos I like, who like the games I like, and they're covering it. So it can bump it up a few notches for sure, in a way that an ad might not, because an ad is like, you just paid Facebook to show it to me. But at the end of the day, it's not going to bump it up from a 40 to a 70. It'll just bump it up a few points on the spectrum, and you have to take that into account. You cannot view sponsored content as the thing that is going to make your game a success. If you are an indie creator in particular, I don't think you benefit as much from diving further into too much sponsored content. I think having an overview of the game is incredibly helpful. Having a playthrough of the game is incredibly helpful. Boom, you're done. I'm not saying you should only do those two things, but I'm trying to give you an idea here. Sponsor 2 videos. After that, start working with other channels that are happy to cover the game for free. More often than not, these channels are going to have a slightly lower reach, but crowdfunding tends to be a mutually beneficial relationship between smaller publishers and smaller content creators, because there's eyes on crowdfunding, and that means those eyes can turn into validation of that content creator's content and allows them to grow in the space and become more known. Which means more often than not, you can find a lot of content creators who are happy to cover the game, providing the overviews, the playthroughs, some degree of social validation, usually with smaller audiences. That's almost always going to be some degree of pairing up of that. But at the end of the day, it still can be helpful. Again, I'm saying sponsor a video from the Dice Tower. Sponsor a video from Rodney Smith. It doesn't do as much crowdfunding. Sponsor whoever. Pick a channel, sponsor that content, and then for the most part, after that, try to get as much free content as possible. You'll still be able to get that extra level of social proof. Now, there are certainly times where it's worth paying for content. It's worth paying for a lot of content at times. This goes hand in hand with how ROAS operates, with how a return on ad spend operates. If you have a game and you're spending money on advertising and you're getting an 8-to-1 ROAS, for every $100 you spend, you're getting $800 in sales. Every marketing expert on the planet will tell you to continue to increase that spending. If you're getting an 8-to-1 ROAS, spend as much as you possibly can. Normally, with this kind of marketing, what happens over time is your ROAS will dip the more you spend. At first, you're getting an 8-to-1, you double your budget, now it starts dipping to a 7-to-1, still double your budget, starts drifting downwards. There's a sweet spot that as you spend more, you're infiltrating the market more and more, but it's harder to get the new purchases out of it. So there's a degree of proliferation, of infiltration that your ads will have, and your ROAS will naturally creep down over time. But as long as you're getting a good enough ROAS, spend as much money as you need to. There are campaigns that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on advertising because the ROAS, the return on ad spend, is there. If something is compelling, keep trying to put it in front of as many people as possible. That's why if you are, and this is where I guess the video shifts to a slightly more self-interested, because now I'm encouraging more sponsored content, if you are putting something out there that is compelling enough, part of that's going to be because as a publisher, you've learned what your audience likes, and you're able to almost guarantee that you're going to get $500,000 to $2 million for each campaign you run. It might be because of a cool, popular IP. It might be because you've run general testing of the initial pre-launch ads, and you've seen that they're performing really well, which means it is compelling. Whatever it is you're doing, if you have something compelling, then it is worth trying to get as much eyes out there as possible. And that could be a mix of free content and sponsored content, but especially if you're working with channels who only do sponsored content around larger things, but they have that viewership. If you have something popular, having a ton of sponsored content videos will help boost your game even further. Which is part of the disparity of why I think some creators think that the pathway to success is just a ton of sponsored videos. Because if you're sitting there as a creator and you're looking at giant IP from giant established company and there's 17 sponsored videos around that game, it is very easy to see a $2 million raised amount combined with 17 sponsored videos and think that's what I have to do. But that's not how it works. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. The first and most important thing is to ensure that your product is appealing enough, to ensure that when people see it show up in their favorite creator's feed, that it's not a kind of, what's this new thing? Rather, there's some degree of higher interest because of the IP, because of the publisher, because of the designer, because of the way the game looks. You don't have to be an established company to achieve massive success, but you do have to put in a lot more work if you're not coming in with something already started. Companies like, Galactic Cruise, Kins and Key Games, Slay the Spire came out of nowhere, Contention Games, because of massive IP that was incredibly well done. There's going to be Hegemony, Lead Your Path to Victory, again, newer creator, managed to really do an excellent job. Dave Beck, Pavison Games, Distilled, knocked it out of the park. There are many more creators that have absolutely had smashing first-time successes, but they put in a lot of work to get there. They did not have an idea, pay for a bunch of videos, and just make it all work. And that was a mistake. Of all the things I said in this video, I in no way meant to imply that every other creator who isn't seeing $500,000 in your first campaign is simply paying for a bunch of videos and putting out there. That was insulting. I'm sorry. I take it back. There is a difference, though, between putting in the work and putting in ×5 the work. That there is a difference. I think by the time you make a game, you have sweated blood through it in order to make it a reality. The last thing, that's everything I said in the video, that one's going to haunt me. This is why I probably should edit things, because that was insulting to creators, and I apologize for it. That's not what I meant to say. But you do have to understand what different tools you have as a creator to make your thing successful. And the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway, the whole reason I'm doing this video is you have to ensure that your game has enough appeal that the sponsored content is going to elevate its success further as opposed to be the thing that is successful. Sponsored content, like any other form of advertising, is an elevation of the thing that is appealing. You have to make it as appealing as possible first, and then elevate it, as opposed to hoping that the elevation alone will do the job, because it won't. So what is the takeaway over here? First of all, if you're a smaller creator, there's many things you can and should do to make your product as compelling as possible. First of all, lean into free content when possible. If you're working with a smaller budget, less room for error, lean into as much free content as possible. Build your audience over time on social media. Be involved in Facebook groups. Gather feedback. Ask questions about the box cover, the art, the design. Try to get a degree of, and that's helpful on several levels. First of all, build a general awareness in the industry. These are things that companies like Distilled did, Kins and Key Games, The Collector Cruise, and many others have done tremendously successfully by really leaning into going to conventions, gathering feedback, asking harsh questions of your audience. Do not ask if somebody liked the game. Ask why they liked the game and would they spend, insert price point here, on it or not. Don't ask somebody if the art looks good. Say, what would you change about the art and graphic design, if anything? Don't ask questions that guide the people to easy answers that make you and them feel good. Guide people towards questions that force them to really examine what extra level of critical something they can add to the conversation. Someone telling you that they like the thing you're doing is only so helpful because you can't improve it. Someone telling you the things they would change can help guide you towards potential improvements on that product. There are so many things that you should do in terms of trying to make your product as compelling as possible, gathering that early feedback, making changes, working with smaller creators, ensuring that you're getting advertising into the mix. If you spend your entire budget on a bunch of content creators and you don't save anything for Facebook ads or Meta ads or Google ads, all that stuff, then I think that's a mistake. I think that you can and should have both. You should have a video showcasing the game, maybe a playthrough, something that people can watch to get a sense of it. But you also need to have a budget of just throwing out ads out there. The ROAS on those can be a lot higher. You kind of want both. You want the social validation, you want the higher ROAS on a bunch of ads being sprinkled over the internet. There's a lot of things that you can and should do to make your game a success. The entire takeaway and point of this video is that sponsored content is a tool in that toolbox. And it's a tool that needs your game to be as appealing as possible to have the maximum effort and return on it. To whoever you are out there, to whoever creator, designer, publisher you are out there, I hope this video was helpful. I appreciate win-win-win relationships. When it comes to content creation, I appreciate win-win-win relationships. The win-win-win is the content creator, the publisher, and the audience. And you can absolutely achieve that. But when a content creator takes a paycheck from a campaign that then fails, I don't view that as a win-win-win at all. As the content creator, I feel bad. As the creator, you spent money on nothing. As the audience, you watched a video that didn't compel you to actually be interested in the product. That's the furthest thing from a win-win-win. And my goal with this video is to help creators realize the things they need to do to actually get a win-win-win and not to exclusively rely on sponsored content. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.